What's up, guys? I'm Star, and this is Difficult Content, an interview podcast about rating and creating for Final Fantasy XIV. Difficult Content asks tough questions, but also celebrates the individuals who make the Final Fantasy community as unique as they are. I recently got together with some friends for my first ever Deep Dungeon clear attempt. It didn't end well.
I'm dead.
Yeah. No. So I decided to go straight to the expert. Today we're joined by Finh Bezahl for a deep dive into Deep Dungeons. Finh is the first player in the world to solo clear Eureka Orthos on every single job, taking the world first Omni title for the newest Deep Dungeon. He recently dedicated 2 weeks of his life to accomplish this feat and has since been prolific in the creation of clear VODs, guides, tier lists, and original content around this unique type of Final Fantasy XIV gameplay. Finh, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
I wanted to talk to you today because you've accomplished something in this game that I find incredibly interesting and I think deserves more widespread attention. When the vast majority of people think about world racing or blind prog in Final Fantasy XIV, they almost exclusively think about Savage and Ultimate Rating. You, however, made it your singular mission to become the first person to solo clear Eureka Orthos on every single job the game has to offer. What originally got you interested in deep dungeons and solo runs? Talk to me about your journey to this point.
That's kind of an interesting journey because you might think I'm actually, one of the old veterans, but I was actually kind of a late bloomer. I only started doing deep dungeons, and by this I mean in a group or solo. I had never went into it outside of the HP floors before Shadowbringer. So actually, in the middle of Shadowbringer, they released Buzzja with the duels and everything. When it released, I just went really hard on Buzzja, and then I tried to do the duels. I grinded all of them. They're like a challenging solo encounter. So after I did them, I was like, is there more solo content in that game? After looking it up and asking some people, that's when Deep Dungeon was brought up. At this point, I thought Deep Dungeons were garbage because I had only done the HP floors. Of course, I hated Deep Dungeon. I thought it was the worst content in the world because it's just so boring. But I actually gave it a go because I heard it was a good challenge, and that's what started my journey. So I went into Heaven on High, helped myself with the Angels VODs, and then right after that, I went into POTD.
So at what point did you decide that this is something you wanted to do competitively? What inspired you to push for the world's first Omni title?
It's definitely because there's official leaderboards. So, right, for example, if you parse and rating, yeah, there's leaderboards, but it's not official. But Deep Dungeon, we're lucky. We have like these actual official leaderboards, which are ranked by your score. Like, so the more score you have, the higher you go. That was definitely like, the main thing that pushed me into doing this competitively because I just enjoy the content a lot. What most people do is they get their solo players and then they never step inside of this again. But me, I actually enjoy the content so much that I wanted more. After I saw the leaderboard, that's what pushed me in that direction. And then what inspired me to go for the world first Omni, it is kind of weird because what motivated me is, like I said, I was kind of a late bloomer. When I arrived in the deep dungeons, basically everyone did all the work for me. Like everyone did all the research, released all the guides. So I just consumed them and then I went in. Right? So it was kind of a good opportunity for me to prove to myself that I could actually be on equal footings with people like the day release. That was, I would say, the main inspiration behind me going for Omni World first.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the official leaderboard being an initial motivator for your deep dungeon interest. On the rating side, it always cracks me up when people act like FF logs somehow ruins the integrity of the game itself, as if leaderboards and aiming for high scores haven't been an integral part of gaming for decades.
I understand why they don't, because they could officially get something up. And I mean, it would be used, but I guess it's because it's team content, so they don't want you to flame other people because they're doing bad DPS. It is kind of a shame. I do understand why it's like that. It's kind of interesting, actually, because I mean, Deep Dungeons, like you are still competing with other people. You can also get scores for a group run. You could have a reason to flame your teammates too, maybe because it's side content. They don't think it's as big of a deal if people get to compare to each other's.
Do you have a history of competitive gaming at all, either in Final Fantasy XIV or with other games before this?
I actually do. That was a very long time ago, maybe 10 years. I used to play a League of Legends competitively. Unfortunately, I did not make it big. I did not get into the LCS, which is like the big boy league where you're competing all the time around the world. I made it right before that. It was called Code Zero League back then. It was like the Challenger League. I played in a team and we got pretty far. We almost got into the LCS, but we lost 1-3. So we had one win and they had 3 wins. Yeah. 2 more wins. I might have had a very different life. But that's fine. That's behind me. That was my first experience with competitive gaming in general. It's a shame because I was like 20 something back then, 21 or so, because I'm 30 now. I wasn't mature enough to really be in the competitive mindset. So even though I was a good player, my mindset wasn't like, I wasn't practicing enough. I wasn't taking it seriously enough. And that kind of pulled me back. So after League of Legends, I didn't really have any more competitive thing going on. I played games all the time. That's what I do in most of my pastimes. Naturally, I've gotten good to gaming in general. That's definitely given me a little bit of an edge.
Talk to me about that greater Deep Dungeon community then. I think a lot of people know of Angelus Demonis, but how many people were you competing against and who was your toughest competitor in this race?
There's a lot of people in the Deep Dungeon community nowadays. When I got in, it was growing. Now there's a lot of people. I would say for this challenge, the World First Omni, there was really one person I was afraid of, and it's Alicia Nicole. She's a crystal player, very strong player in Deep Dungeon. Before EO came out, I thought she would be the biggest competition, and not to my surprise, she was actually the biggest competition, and she was definitely who I was against. The first week, some people were getting a lot of clears, but I quickly catched up to everyone, and then I rose very fast. But then Alicia started catching up to me too, and then it was a competition between us two.
On the rating side of things, the world race community is notably secretive due to how Savage and Ultimate fights are designed. Does the Deep Dungeon community approach a world first battle as a collaborative event, or are there hiding strats or things you discover part of the competition? Did everyone competing for the world first Omni stream?
That is very interesting. I mean, personally, I don't follow Savage rating at all. Like even the word first, it's just not my vibe. So it is actually secretive. So you're saying people actually hide their strats and everything?
Think of it this way. Most of Savage rating's a puzzle. So if your team solves the puzzle live on stream, the other groups or their ninth men can watch clips of your solution and replicate it pretty quickly. Some of the best teams at solving mechanics have historically refused to stream at all because they believe it takes away from their competitive advantage.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I do understand why they would go about it like that. For Deep Dungeon, though, it's absolutely not like that. It's the opposite. Deep Dungeon in general is closer to speedrunning communities. If you speedrun a game and you get a super sick time because you have a strat that no one knows, then people are not really, they don't really care if you beat your time by a large amount because you have a strat no one knows. People are always going to want to share their strats, at least for Deep Dungeon, and I think for a lot of speedrunning in general, it puts everyone in the same field, right? And that's kind of how it is in Deep Dungeon. I cannot think of anyone that is hiding strats. Not everyone did stream. Even if you're sharing your strats with everyone, streaming is still putting some kind of tax on yourself, right? Because you still have to set up the stream, open the stream, then you have to chat with the people in your stream. You gotta pet a monster when they redeem the 500-point redeem to pet a monster, and you gotta do all that fun stuff. So it is a little bit of a disadvantage, but it's a friendly competition, right? It's not like, I mean, the way you make it sound, Savage sounds like a pretty hardcore competition where people are really going at it. I could see that, right? Like, I don't want to talk about the rating drama too much, but there was a lot of rating drama, like pretty much every Ultimate, because a team cleared, but then they were not streaming, or like one guy was known to be doing like some plugin things like years ago or something, right? There's that whole aspect is not really in Deep Dungeons. It's much more friendly.
And since you mentioned speedrunning too, the Savage speedrunning community in this game is pretty abnormal compared to most speedrunning communities. There's a lot of secrecy between teams, as well as a practice called log dumping, where people wait until the last possible day before a partition to post their scores to FF logs. It's really refreshing to hear how friendly and collaborative the Deep Dungeon community seems to be versus Savage prog and speedrunning.
The way you're making it sound, there's a time cutoff. At some point, because there's a new patch, and then all the times before that are locked in.
Yes,
is that how it works?
That's how it works.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense because like most games that are speedrun, then usually you play on version 1.0, and then that's the version forever, right? There's not really any reason to not submit your time the second you get it. I think that aspect is very different from the Savage speedrunning you're talking about.
I primarily play this game through Savage and Ultimate raids, and raiders often do a number of self-imposed challenge runs in order to prep for new content releases. What kind of in-game prep did you do for both the initial release of Eureka Orthos as well as the solo runs?
I'm not really a big prep guy. So my prep was opening my stream the day before, and then I thought I would do it on Paladin. So I did all my roulettes on Paladin, and that was it. That was my prep. Uh, to be fair, I have hundreds of clears in PTD and Evon on Eyes. In a way, you could consider that my prep, even though that's just what I do for fun. But like actual, like going out of my way prep, that it was basically nothing. I could not think of a way to prep that didn't feel like a waste of time. Because like I could have done 10 Evon on Eye runs in the row on Paladin, or like maybe a no Magicite run, but I feel like it's not really useful. We knew the deep dungeon was going to be slightly different. I'm more of the mindset that if you're about to attempt something like challenging, you need to rest before and then go hard, when it comes out. I like an exam, right? I don't like to study the whole day before. I like to study a few days before and then rest like the actual day before it.
Along those same lines, what kind of real life prep did you do to ensure you could effectively achieve this goal? How did you handle your sleep schedule, food, work, or anything else for the 2 weeks you dedicated to this?
It's kind of the same. Didn't really prep that much for it in real life. What I really did is I just bought a bunch of bread and a bunch of things to put between bread slices, and then that was like my meal prep. So yeah, I ate a lot of sandwiches. I took like a week off work, and then after the first week, I took another week off work. I worked in a small company, so I was able to do that. I guess that's about as much prep as I did in real life. I didn't really change my sleep schedule. I didn't really do anything crazy. My plan was just play until I'm tired, go to sleep, wake up, open the stream, play until I'm tired, and then do that. Take breaks quite often. And also, I have a standing desk. This is a desk that you can like raise with a button and lower with another button, right? I can play for long periods of time without actually sitting down for like 10 hours in a row. That was very helpful. For real life prep, not much either.
That's awesome. You just absolutely winged it. Just
like this podcast.
The game. Yeah, exactly. I think the comparison to Savage and Ultimate World Racing is interesting because while there are similarities, your goal wasn't to be the first to kill it once. It was to be the first to kill it 19 different times. If a Savage World Race is a sprint, what you accomplished is more of a marathon. And like any endurance activity, I imagine that over time, a unique sense of fatigue sets in. When you already had double-digit solo clears to your name and you knew every mob and boss mechanic, how did you stay sharp and focused throughout to avoid dumb mistakes?
Man, that's a complicated thing to answer. So you're right. It was more like a marathon. I would say I'm more of a marathon gamer myself. I just perform better in marathon kind of settings. How did I not start making mistakes, when I was like, quite a few jobs in, especially if you were not aware, my last 5 jobs, I did all of them in one stream, which lasted 34 hours. So that was long.
No big deal, right?
Yeah, no big deal, especially because one of these jobs was Astro. So that was fun. Kept the best for last. I think it's more of a mindset thing. So the way I see marathon kind of things is I actually don't think the 50% last bit is the hard part. I think the 50% first bit is the hard part. I'm going to explain you why with an analogy. I work, right? I work 5 days a week. Well, I used to. Now I'm 4, but let's say when I used to work 5 days a week, the day I hated the most is the Tuesday. You know why? It's because there's nothing to look forward to when you're Tuesday. When you're Monday, you're like, okay, I'm fresh. I'm going into this fresh. When it's Tuesday, you're like, okay, already spent a day and we're not even halfway done. So that kind of sucks. But then Wednesday comes around and Wednesday I'm like, all right, I'm 50% of the way done. Thursday comes around, I'm like, wow, only one day left. Friday comes around, I'm like, wow, last day. As soon as you reach that 50% threshold, you're done most of it. So it's easy. And so it was kind of the same for the marathon there. First 10 jobs, I mean, the first few ones I had to learn, the actual mechanics. So that was fine. But then let's say like the 5th one, the 6th one, the 7th one, etc. They were kind of a chore, kind of a drag. But then once I reached the 10th one, it was like, wow, I'm more than halfway done. And then at this point, they just flew. Like all the clears just flew one by one. How did I stay focused through that? I'm just good at staying focused for long periods of time. I don't like, I wish I could tell you what the magic is. I just am good at these kind of like marathon things. I did notice that, by the way, because, in the deep dungeon communities, I noticed EO, people, they die a lot in EO, like a lot. Even like very experienced players, like people that are really good, they still lose their runs quite often because random AoEs, every AoE one-shots you in EO, which is very different from the other 2 deep dungeons. So people are doing a lot of mistakes. When I noticed that the really good players were also doing like a lot of mistakes like that, I think I realized I'm just built for marathon races, I guess, way more than some short burst clears or ward first, like the very first ward first. I wasn't going for it specifically because I knew I would prefer to go for the Omni because, I like the marathon challenge.
What's then the first thing you did after you got that final clear? Did you celebrate, immediately go to bed, something else?
I mean, I should have went to bed because that was after the 34-hour stream. I did celebrate a little, I don't know, maybe a few hours because, the adrenaline was quite high. My stream got hella viewership during that. Usually I stream, I don't know, with maybe 100 or so average viewers. It spiked like 1,000 on the last job. I was like, oh my God, that was very hype. So yeah, I celebrated. There was some level of uncertainty because, as you know, I was racing against Alicia. And the reason I decided to do such a long stream, by the way, is because I had a gut feeling that Alicia was going to go really hard for the World First as well. And I thought my only chance was to also go hard. So that's what I did. And would you look at that? She cleared 2 hours, 30 minutes after me in a 2 weeks race. That's very close. I actually needed to do that crazy stream. But back then, after like I had gotten my 19 clear, I didn't know if she had cleared before me or not because we didn't really have any contact and she wasn't streaming. So, I was uncertain and if I had the actual clear. But then when I woke up the day after, then people confirmed to me that yes, I was actually the World First. I slept really good too. That was also a day before work, so luckily I had a day to rest.
Does anyone at work know why you took off those 2 weeks? Did you go in and tell them, hey, I'm now the world first Omni for the new Deep Dungeon in Final Fantasy XIV?
I told them that, but in better terms. I told them I was competing in the game for like a big event, that I was going to have to take a week off. And then after the first week, I told them I'm actually in a very tight race, so I might have to take another week off. It wasn't paid time off. I was not getting paid. When I came back, I told them, hey, I won. And they were like, cool. And then I told them, oh, by the way, I would like to take the Fridays off to stream now. And they said, sure.
That's incredible. I think a lot of people are going to be asking you what you do for a living and if they're hiring.
I mean, I'm just a software engineer. We're millions at this point. I don't know. The usual like PC guy job, I guess. Nothing too crazy.
Hopefully we get a Deep Dungeon next expansion, but even if that's the case, it may be 2 years until we see a new release. Do you have any interest in getting into other competitive events in Final Fantasy XIV, whether it's PvP, Savage, Criterion Savage, or speedrunning at all?
Other competitive events in 14, PvP is the one that interests me a little bit, but like not really. Because the big issue with other kind of competitive content is that it's team-based. I just prefer soloing things way more. I'd say the only thing that would actually interest me, which you didn't even list there, because it's so niche and and not known, is actually I would maybe be into speedrunning dungeons, like unsynced speedruns where you play ninja and you like plan all your dashes and all your teleports and all your rage resets and all that. I'd like that, but I think that's actually the only thing I would be competitive for. Like Parsing, Savage doesn't really interest me. PvP is fun, but it's not like competitive fun. It's just fun to play frontline and pull people in with Dark Knight and kill everyone. But that's about it for me. And so yeah, I would say Deep Dungeon is the only thing that competitively interests me.
Let's break down Eureka Orthos itself. Which job was your first solo clear on, and which was your last?
So I went in as Paladin, because Paladin I thought would be great. I zoned into floor 1 as Paladin. I did 1 AoE pull, and then if you have ever been inside of EO, I'm sure you have, you may have noticed the monsters are ultra tanky, like right away. So after my first AoE pull on Paladin, I gave up on Paladin. I quit the run, and then I started a ninja run instead, because I was like, there's no way I'm doing this as a tank, first job. So then I did a ninja run. Well, I had to stop this ninja run at floor 60 because I ran out of potions. And also my AoE pull was not quite capped. So then I did Paladin again. So I went back on Paladin to get potions to finish my ninja run. But I got so little potions that I actually just finished the Paladin run first. My potsherd farming run was my first clear, which was my Paladin. And my last clear was actually like what is quote unquote considered the easiest job. It was Machinist. And the reason I kept Machinist for last, it was at the end of the 34-hour stream. So I knew I needed like something not that hard for the last jobs.
Which job then was your easiest solo clear, and which was the hardest?
Easiest solo clear? It was hard, man, to answer that, because like if you're coming from the other 2 Deep Dungeons with a lot of experience, the jobs, they feel kind of samey. They feel very similar. I would say Samurai was probably my easiest solo clear, and I can't even tell you why. I just felt the easiest. Maybe because I like pressing the buttons more than the other jobs. The hardest one was definitely Astro, unsurprisingly, because Astro is really hard job in the other 2 Deep Dungeons. Still wasn't that bad though, but it was like compared to the other jobs in Yo, it was definitely the hardest.
Which job was the most fun to clear on, and which was the least fun?
Most fun has to be Samurai, definitely. Such a fun job in EO. And I think a big reason why Samurai is so fun is because if you're raiding on Samurai, then you have to make sure you use all your bursts at the same time, right? Because you want to get it done under your 2-minute burst window. Don't have this in EO though, because Samurai doesn't buff itself. So what was really nice on Samurai is I could go on a monster, use, let's say, my mid array and then something else, kill it. Then I could go to the next monster and then use another burst like my OG, kill it, and then, go on a third monster monster, use something else. So all my bursts did not have to happen at the same time. And the reason that is really nice for EO to not have to burst all at the same time is because usually if you have to burst super hard a monster, you're going to overkill it. And then you have like an awkward 5 or 10 second where you still have buffs, but you have nothing to kill. And that's very annoying to deal with. I think Samurai, the fact that you don't have to worry about that at all, made it a lot more fun. And also the dashes being actually damage efficient. Like you don't lose damage when you use your dash as Samurai because it's the same Kenki per damage value as just blow in your whatever it's called, Shinten, I think. That was very fun. The least fun job was basically Dancer for all the reasons that it's playing, but the opposite. Dancer is so focused on the 2-minute burst that it's like whenever I was going to pull a monster, I would overkill it. And then I had to plan to pull a second monster so I could offload the rest of my burst. But then the really bad part about Dancer is your main bursting thing is a huge AoE circle. So then I had to position myself to hit more than one monster with the dance. But then I had to make sure I would not hit more than 2 monsters because I don't want to die, right? And that was just like, every 30 seconds I have to do this. Very annoying. Didn't like it at all. Sure, Dancer is a range DPS, so you can kite the monsters around. You can also interrupt parts. But for EO specifically, I don't think it's a big deal to be able to kite. And I also don't think it's a big deal to be able to interrupt mimics. It just wasn't very fun for me to Dancer. Even though I don't think Dancer was that bad. I just didn't really have a good time with it.
Which Pomander is the most useful and which is the least useful in EO?
The most useful in EO? I mean, a lot of Pomanders are useful. Like, that's a very hard question to answer. A Demi-Clone is not a Pomander because if Demi-Clones were a Pomander, then I would say Demi-Clone. But if it's not Demi-Clone, I have to say it's probably Liturgy. Because Liturgy is an interesting Pomander. It's both a learning Pomander, but also an optimizing Pomander. So when you use Liturgy, monsters attack much slower for like 10 minutes or something insane like that. And by much slower, I mean like, it might be like 1,000% slower on cast times than other attacks. It's something insane. So basically, whenever you would use a Liturgy, it was basically a floor where you could learn what the monsters did. Because usually they would show you a telegraph way before the cast actually happened. That fact alone probably means Liturgy is the most useful. Personally, I think Liturgy is a really broken Pomander. It's also super common to find in chess. It's still a little hard to answer because as useful as a Liturgy is, I mean, if you have a no ability, no item gloom floor, then Serenity is going to be much better in that specific situation. But overall, I think Liturgy was the most useful. And which is the least useful? That's a weird one because if you've ever done Heaven on High or PUTD, you would know that Steel is the top Pomander. Steel is like your lifeblood. If you don't have a Steel, there's so many jobs where you can't do the bosses or you can't kill most of the monsters on the floor. You can't do anything. In EO, man, Steel is actually not useful that much. It's actually, the least useful Pomander. Unless you're scoring, which is something else in itself. So if you're scoring, you're doing big AoE pulls, in which case, yes, Steel's useful. But if you're not scoring, you're just gonna 1v1 everything. And now nothing has crits and nothing hits that hard. And Steel's just kind of nice to have because it saves you potion, but it's not really useful. I think Steel actually went from the most useful in the other two deep dungeon to the least useful in EO.
Which boss is your favorite and which is your least favorite?
My favorite has to be 99. And it's not even because of the boss mechanics itself. It's for two reasons. First reason is they put the banger of a soundtrack from Shadowbringer, which is the best expansion, by the way. And the second reason is that I can't believe they put a boss on 99, which is just so cool. Like, I wish they put the bosses on 199 and 99 in Heaven on High and POTD2, because that's just so cool. Because what happens quite often in the other two deep dungeons is the last floor, the floor before you actually clear, it's usually not that cool because you kept a rage or like a petri or a match side for it, and then you just kind of blow it and then you go, right? Having an actual boss on 99, that felt amazing. That makes the 99 boss my favorite. Not even considering the mechanics and all that. The fact that the boss is on 99, amazing. I do wish it was a little bit less of a tank. It has a lot of HP. If you don't have a demi-clone for that boss, on my Astro Clear, I actually attacked the boss for a minute with strength just to see what kind of damage I was doing. I did 4% in 1 minute with strength, so that boss would have taken like probably more than 30 minutes if I had not used a demi-clone. So they're just like super tanky, and that's the only unfortunate thing about 99. I mean, they kind of have to make it tanky because of the way the clones work, so that's just life. And which boss is my least favorite? I'd say it's the Tiger. The Tiger would be the 70 boss. The Tiger is just so freaking tanky, but he also doesn't really do interesting mechanics. Like, all he does is a line thing that you have to walk away from, but it doesn't even hurt, so you can face tank it with steel on any job. Then he does it in and out, then you just dodge a few AoEs, and then he does it in and out again that you have to stand in a specific spot for, and that's it. That's all he does. The Tiger actually reminds me of Heaven on High boss design, which is like super static mechanics where you can always stand in the same spot to do them. them. Plus, it has the same like kind of HP sponge problem. 70, not a fan. My least favorite for sure.
As a deep dungeon player in general, are you happy with Eureka Orthos? Do you think it's a success with the general public? And do you think it's a success with the deep dungeon community?
And I love how you phrase that question. I love that you ask the success in the general public and then the success with the deep dungeon community. Because every time someone has asked me that question, they ask me, what do I think of EO? And then I get flamed in the comments.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid you getting flamed in the comments here.
So two-part question. So am I happy with EO? I know there's a lot of other veterans for the deep dungeon community that are unhappy with EO. I'd say in general, I am happy. I think it would have been better. I think it would have been worse. I'd say it's about as fun as MMI for me. And, I spend a lot of time in MMI. So do I think it's a success with the general public? I think it's a huge success with the general public. Almost anyone I've talked to, they enjoyed EO. And a lot of these people, they truly despise PUTD and Heaven on High. Now, I don't know if that's because EO is shiny and new, so they actually went out of their way to go on the higher floors, but they've never done the same the other deep dungeons. I don't know, but I would say from talking to everyone that is not already super deep into deep dungeons, almost all of them enjoyed EO. In fact, I even did a group run with my friends and we had a blast. So I'd say, yeah, huge success with the general public. Do I think it's a success with the deep dungeon community? That one's rough to answer. There's definitely people in the deep dungeon community that, they love it. Me, I don't love it. I like it. I'm happy with it, like I said. There's a lot of people that are unhappy with it. It's because it just feels very different. As Sage 9 TV said, it doesn't play like a deep dungeon. At least if you're trying just to clear normally, it's a very different experience. I think a big reason why veterans, they don't enjoy EO as much is because if you're a normal player, and by a normal player, I just mean like someone that is going to do the content like once and maybe a few times for the mount and you're done. You want to go on your main job, you want to get it done, and then you want to get out. So they kind of balance EO like that. In EO, the reason crits and auto attack damage is gone is because it was their way to make jobs more balanced with each other's. Because now that you don't have to care about surviving, then it doesn't really matter if you're samurai and your defensive suck, and it doesn't really matter if you're a tank, because it doesn't really matter because you can always just kill whatever is in front of you. That was an intentional thing they did, which the general player loves because now they can do it on their job. But for people that are kind of messed up like me and we just do this content over and over on different jobs, that's bad. Because if I play samurai and then I play dragoon, I don't really get a different experience because the whole defensive aspect is missing, and then it's just really doing my rotation, right? It's kind of like a raid tier. I call EO quite often the Raiders Deep Dungeon, and I think that's a big reason why is because it feels kind of like you're just doing your DPS rotation for most of it. Since the jobs are mostly balanced with each other, then you're gonna get somewhat of a same experience between the jobs. It's why I said I like that you asked a question in two parts, because even though I said all these things, and even though it sounds like I'm trashing EO, it's still a success with the general public. And I know for a fact if they just release PUTD 2 or like MLI 2 with the same auto attack stuff, the crits, people would have disliked it and they would have never made another one again. I think that's just the natural progression of thing. I think it's a modernized deep dungeon, and that's just the way it is. I mean, there's still pleasure to be found even if you really like PUTD and MLI. For me, what I really like in EO is scoring. I happen to score 90% plus of my runs. I can still find a lot of fun in EO, even if it's different. Last thing to say about that is, yeah, EO is very different from the other two deep dungeons, but then, they didn't really delete the other two. You can choose now. Like, maybe you want to deal with mechanics, then you go inside of EO. Maybe you want to get one shot by a Manticore, or you go in Heaven on High. Maybe you want to get screwed by a treasure room, so you go in PUTD instead.
If you could change one thing about Eureka Orthos, what would it be and why?
I wish they made auto attacks more damaging and they also made crits a thing again. I acknowledge that people, they would dislike it. Like, at the very least, it's kind of a little bit of copium and hopium there, but if they ever made like a hard mode of EO, then I wish that's something they did for it. We have Savage and Ultimate and all these added difficulties, and like if they ever did something like that for EO, that's one thing I would love to see. Crits back and more auto attack damage. And I did not mention the 1 to 30 nerf because everyone wants that. The easy cop out answer would be, I wish they made 1 to 30 less tanky, because man, monsters are hella tanky on that set. Like, no one likes the 130 grind. Not the casuals, not the pros, not the scorers. Like, no one likes it. So I don't even know why they're not nerfing it. Maybe in 5 years, when they release a new deep dungeon, they'll give it a patch, but who knows.
If someone's new to deep dungeons and has never attempted a solo run, which job would you recommend they start on?
Oh man, that's the question. I get asked this 100 times per stream. Let's go for the 3 deep dungeons in order. If you're new to deep dungeons and if you never attempted a solo run, I would say going for EO first is a safe bet. In EO, there's a high chance that you can just run your main job with about the same difficulty as if you were doing another job. So for EO, you just want to clear on your favorite job that you're the most comfortable on. Unless your favorite job is something like Astro or Scholar. In which case, if your favorite job is Astro or Scholar, I would say go for your second favorite. But as long as it's not these two jobs, EO, just play whatever you feel feel like playing. For Evan on High, I would say you want to go for the tank. The Manticore is not going to one-shot you, it's going to three-shot you instead, so actually have a little bit of time think of what you're going to do. And for POTD, you actually have some options. You can do a high damage DPS that can guide. Something like Machinist or Summoner is very strong. Or you can do a tank. I would say something like Warrior or Dark Knight. It's kind of the same as Evan on High. If you're playing a tank, you're going to have to manage your time better than a DPS, but it's still a good time. And for POTD, I would also say it's a fairly safe choice to go something like Sage or White Mage. So P2D, you can actually branch out a little bit. Evan on High, the auto attack damage and crits are just so beefed up that going as a tank is highly recommended for your first clear. And EO, whatever job you enjoy, as long as it's not Astro and Scholar.
Guess what? I now have merch. You can rep difficult content, the Panheima channel logo, and a number of original designs such as Vieira ears and the controller cross hotbar on t-shirts, tote bags, dad caps, and mugs. Browse the selection by heading to the store section of my YouTube channel. Of course, we can't talk about Eureka Orthos in a vacuum. This newest deep dungeon builds on the tradition set by Palace of the Dead in Heavensward and Heaven on High in Stormblood, and is the first new deep dungeon to come out in 5 years. How does Eureka Orthos compare to Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High? What does it get right? What does it get wrong? What does it improve on? And how does it fall short?
Big difference between the 3 deep dungeons. Well, between EO and POTD/Heaven on High is auto attacks are not a threat. In EO, it's mostly focused on the mechanics. So in POTD and Heaven on High, the big thing, like the main issue for most of the floors is auto attack damage is crazy high. You just die instantly in Heaven on High and POTD. That means you have to be very careful with pulling your monsters. You have to be very careful moving around, which in turn makes your time drain faster, which then makes you have to care more about managing your time, right? Like you have to manage your time very well because it's just gonna run out. You can't just move forward and pull everything because so many monsters will just kill you even with a steal. That whole thing is not in EO because in EO they took a different approach. In EO, they did not make the auto attacks threatening. They instead made the mechanics threatening. That means there's not really a monster that you can't fight. It's just some are more annoying, but there's no monster you can't fight, and there's no monster that you ever need a steal for or something like that, which means you can usually just go from point A to point B and just kill all that's on the way. You don't really need to dodge things too much. That means time is easier to manage. And now because time is easier to manage, you don't really have to think of your commander usage as much, right? Like you're going to use your commander to survive more than actually manage your time. It's less prone to RNG, which is a bad thing or a good thing depending on who you're going to ask. Like me, if you ask me, it's a bad thing, but I think if you ask most of the player base, they'll say it's a good thing. So in EO, as long as you do the mechanics, you should clear. When I was joining for my Omni, it took me 20 attempts to clear 19 jobs. And the one I failed was because I still didn't telegraph because I was reading the chat. Very consistent, deep dungeon. You're not going to get screwed by RNG the same way you would get screwed in POTD and ML High. I'd say the Dread Beast specifically are good improvement. I quite like the Dread Beast. I think it could be better because like right now, you know what Dread Beast will give you what buff when you see it. And unfortunately, there's only really one buff that's good, which means you kind of ignore the other 2 Dread Beasts all the time. But it's much better than the equivalent in Heaven on High.
How would you rank the 3 deep dungeons in terms of your personal preference?
I'm more of a marathon gamer, so it may not come as a surprise that POTD is my favorite deep dungeon. I just love when there's a lot on the line, right? When the stakes are high. So for POTD, for me to be able to lose a run on 199 after climbing for like 14 hours, love it. That cannot be beaten. And me designs, it's the same thing. I prefer the auto attacks to the mechanics, so that also puts MLI and POTD above EO. The one thing though that I think EO does better than MLI is that there's no big room. Big rooms were very unpleasant in my opinion for MLI. So let's say the way the places look, I actually think EO looks. I think it actually looks the best out of the 3 deep dungeons. The Rave Caves, as we call them, the 41 to 80. Really, I love the way they look. And the 81 to 100 looks amazing as well. Surprisingly, even better than POTD. And POTD looks really good above 151 if you've never seen it. But I think EO actually looks cooler. So that's a plus for EO. But I would say the main thing that for me makes EO less fun, it's the demi-clones and also the difficulty of the last 2 sets, the 81 to 100. They made it way too easy. I don't know why. You can feel the difficulty slowly ramping up in EO all the way to 80. And then I don't know why from 81 to 100, it's just kind of victory lap. It is a weird feeling, but it's kind of a shame. So if I had to rank them with all of these things, I would say POTD is my favorite one. And then I would actually put Evan on High and EO on the same level. Keep in mind, I score. And scoring, I think, is more fun in EO than Evan on High. Because of that, it doesn't put it on the same level as Evan on High, even though it has other shortcomings.
Explain scoring to me. Are high scores in deep dungeons something people chase, similar to how high parses are something raiders play for?
It's not that popular because most of the time, if you are scoring, it's because you're someone that is going to do more than one clear. And like I said, most people, they just want to get the title and they want to get out. So it's not that popular. It's mostly about killing monsters as effectively as you can. And then also trying to speed run some of the sets under 30 minutes. You're not going to get a good score if you're not actively going for scoring. I think EO might see a little more scoring happen inside of it than the other two deep dungeons for two reasons, actually. First is that EO is just more popular, in my opinion. So, more people playing, more scores. And the leaderboards are limited to 25 slots for each job, which means that if you are the 26th person or you get pushed off, then you're just gone from the leaderboard. That's going to motivate people to score. For example, Angelus Demonus, he doesn't score seriously, but he wants to be in the top 25 when he clears a job. So, like, if there's competition, then he will push scoring harder. There's a lot of people like that. And the second reason I think scoring is going to be more competitive in EO is because EO is, in my opinion, it's easier, which I think means people are going to clear more, which means there's going to be more scores on it. Maybe we're going to see a small boom in popularity for scoring in EO. FFXIV did see a little bit of boom in popularity. People actually pushed a lot of scores in the last 2 years for FFXIV. POTD is still not really that popular, though. I think it's the marathon side of it. Because a score run of POTD takes about 14 hours, 15 hours. You gotta be the kind of gamer that is fine losing your run on the 14th hour because you were too greedy during your score, right? Lots of people are not into that. I'm into that, luckily. For me, it's working out, but I don't think it's working out for most people.
Clearing Deep Dungeon solo provides a unique and exclusive title. How do you rank the Necromancer, the Lone Hero, and the Once and Future King or Queen?
My favorite is Lone Hero. Just sounds cool, like you're the lone hero. Goes very well with the whole soloing thing. My second favorite, I would say, is the Necromancer, just because of that reputation it's got. In fact, it's the title I use most of the time because of the reputation it has. That's the title that people will send you tales and say like, hey, nice title. People don't really care about Lone Hero and they don't really care about the Once and Future King Queen. So I would put it in second place just for that flex. And the one I like the least is the Once and Future King, which I believe is a reference to something like King Arthur or something like that. Personally, I don't think it sounds that cool compared to the other two, so it's my least favorite.
Along those lines, clearing ultimate fights gives a unique weapon with an exclusive particle effect. Deep dungeons already have unique weapon models, much like Savage does, but should clearing it solo give a special shiny weapon or additional reward more akin to ultimate?
I don't know why it works like that in Deep Dungeon. I don't know why they structured the rewards the way they did. I think it makes sense in Ultimate. You clear, you get your weapon. I don't know why in Deep Dungeon it doesn't work like that. In Deep Dungeon, if you want to get your weapon, all you have to do is grind either pole, which you can do on the lower floors, and then you get your weapon. Never really made sense to me. The comparison I often draw is it's as if you could go into Ultimate and only do the first phase, and then doing the first phase gave you one totem, and then if you did the first phase 10 times, then you could buy your weapon. I think that'd be really weird if Ultimate is structured that way, but that's the way Deep Dungeon structured. So, like, do I think it should have more rewards for clearing? Oh my god, yes, I think. Because if you clear Deep Dungeons right now, all three, QTD, you clear it once and you basically have seen everything. MLI and EO, you can clear them 5 times to get all the rewards, and then that's it. Like, you never have a reason to clear again. The actual things you need a lot of resource for, like the weapons, you can just grind them on the earlier floors. In my opinion, you should have to clear to get the weapon. And if people say, but I want a weapon, but I don't want to clear, well, I would just tell them, okay, but I want the ultimate weapon, but I don't want to clear. And so why is it fine for ultimate when it's not fine for Deep Dungeon, I do wish you got more for clearing it. At the very least, I wish that was the way you unlock the weapons.
Deep dungeons also seem prime for obscure accomplishments to aim for over time. I know there's the absurd 20k accursed horde pieces goal that you can spend the next 10 years of your life going after, but what achievements do you wish would have been included that weren't?
Out of all the things we thought, the things I dislike about EO, this is the only thing that actually fills me with rage. I can accept everything else, but this I cannot accept. They did not add a single new achievement for clearing solo more than once. I wish they added more achievements. In fact, what I really wish they did is I wish they added an achievement for clearing on each job specifically. So if you clear on Paladin, you would get, I don't know, Orthos Paladin. And then if you clear on Red Mage, you would get Orthos Red Mage. And then you would just have a different achievement for every job. And then if you cleared on all of them, you would get a title, right? right? Like an Omni title. I wish they did that. I don't know why they didn't do that, but they actually went out of their way to put a 20 characters horde achievement. Like this is one of the few things that actually makes me kind of angry. I feel like you could just put an intern on the case for like a weekend, tell him make 19 achievements. Because the game already tracks if you clear on a job through your score. So it's not like they could not do it. And we could have like 20 new achievements for deep dungeons in all three even. I swear, if they had achievements for all the jobs, so many more people would go back in. And then so many of these people would maybe pick up scoring. And that would just inject a lot of life for like so little cost. It was actually my number one wish for EO that unfortunately did not happen.
We've talked about a couple of these ideas already, but if you were hired by Square Enix to create a deep dungeon from scratch for 7.0, other than higher mob damage, crit autos, and job-specific titles, what concepts would you continue from the previous 3 examples, and what new aspects, if any, would you add?
I would definitely dig a little more into that roguelike aspect, which I feel like is kind of missing from EO. POTD and Evan, I always compare them to roguelike games, like Binding of Isaac or, like Sharon the Wanderer and all these kind of games. In EO, they kind of removed the RNG, and I wish that came back. I wish they added roguelike mechanics such as secret rooms, like maybe a shop that sells you a pomander. You have a selection of pomanders to choose from. I wish they made the pomanders also stack to higher numbers, so maybe you could have 5 of them, which then would mean they could make more floors hard on the later floors. Something I would like to see, I wish they did Unreal POTD and Evan High. I wish they let us bring the max level toolkits in the older deep dungeons. Man, it sucks to go back to POTD and Evan High after, and then you're like level 60. Like you're playing Reaper in EO, you're going into the Reaper phase, using all your things, it feels great. Then you go back in POTD, it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It just sucks, man. I wish they just made an Unreal POTD Evan High or something. It'd be great. Something I would maybe like to see too in another deep dungeon is a hard mode, especially because I feel like it wouldn't even be that bad to implement. Even if all the hard mode did is multiply auto attack by 2 and then HP by 2, I wish the new deep dungeon, if there's one, add a hard mode or something. Some kind of multiplier you could add to your runs to make them harder. Then maybe the multiplier could even give you more score or something like that. There are a lot of ideas to work on, but I would just really work into that roguelike aspect.
Old content with current level skills is a common request for old ultimates too. You can do it with old Savage fights by getting very specific gear pieces to simulate old stat values while still being at level 90, but you can't do it for ultimate, so I understand where you're coming from. I've only done the obligatory 1 through 50 in Palace, and I've never set foot into Heaven on High, but I went into Eureka Orthos with friends, and it shocked me how fun it was. I really like how it's designed in a way that can be approached incredibly seriously, like you did, but also just as something to do casually with friends like I did. What other type of content in Final Fantasy XIV do you think could benefit from this scaled difficulty approach?
I don't know if you've ever tried to queue solo in current expansion content. It doesn't let you. For example, if you're going to try and do whatever dungeon is in the expert roulette right now, let's say the latest dungeon that just released, if you actually try to go into it alone for like whatever reason, it will not let you. You must be a full group. It's true for all current expansion content. Because I remember in Shadowbringer, there was one of the expert dungeons I wanted to try and solo on Red Mage just for fun. And just to be able to attempt it, there was no way for me to go in outside of me asking 3 friends to queue with me and asking them to leave at the beginning of the dungeon. That was the only way for me to even attempt it. That is kind of a shame. I don't really know why it's like that. Because it's kind of the same for a dungeon, right? Like a dungeon doesn't scale more, like the more people you have, it's just a set difficulty. I wish they dug into that scale difficulty for more content. At least I wish they didn't block us from even attempting it.
Hold up a sec. Did you know you could become a member of this channel for $2.99 a month by clicking the join button below? YouTube memberships give access to badges, emotes, and more, a lot like Twitch subscriptions. But hey, watching or listening to these interviews is always going to be free. Just make sure you at least click the subscribe button below and set notifications to all so you don't miss any upcoming content. Let's talk about content creation. At the time of recording, you've amassed over 3,000 followers on Twitch and over 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. What first inspired you to share your Final Fantasy gameplay, either in live stream or video form?
The reason I started streaming at all was for me to be able to record my VODs. I'm stubborn and I rarely upgrade my PC, including my storage. My drive is basically always within 5 GB of being maxed out, which means I could not record anything on my PC. So then the next best thing I thought of was actually streaming on Twitch to basically no one. What I would like is to look back at my VODs to be able to learn from my own mistakes. I guess luckily and unluckily, you cannot do a private stream on Twitch. That's an option on YouTube, but on Twitch you can. If you stream, it's public public by default and you cannot hide it. That's how it started, and then it slowly grew. As I got involved in the community, then people started actually watching the stream. So then I thought I would put more effort into the stream, and kind of grew to that size by accident almost. So
What's your creative process look like? How do you decide what videos to post or what to do on stream when you go live?
wow, I mean, creative process. You're really making me sound like I'm a content creator there. Uh, I mean, dude, I press the go live button and I wing it. I mean, honestly, most of the time, that's what it looks like. The challenge run is just someone says something to me, or I think of a challenge that sounds fun and I just do it. Not really any thinking. I mean, someone proposed a terrible idea one time. They said you should do a walking only run. And I was like, that sounds so bad. Let's do it. So I did it on Warrior Level High. I had no hope of clearing, and we actually cleared somehow. So, that's kind of how every challenge run goes. Same thing for the first person challenge runs. Same thing for the No Magicite. Every challenge run, I just kind of decide on the fly what I'm going to do, what people are like asking for, what sounds fun. Usually I decide 10 minutes before the stream. I do some videos on YouTube too. Usually it's because I'm getting asked a question often, or I see people failing a lot of one thing specifically. And then I'm like, okay, we need a video on that subject. So then I record a video. And when I say record, by the way, I don't have editing skills. So it's like I press start recording, do the whole thing, and then I press stop recording. And if I tripped up in my words, that's it. It's staying in. So, very bare bone, but that's my creative process.
There's definitely a style to that.
Yeah. What do you call it? Like organized chaos, I guess. I'm kind of organized chaos kind of guy.
You have a pretty unique VTuber model. What inspired you to go the VTuber route, and how did you decide on the distinct style of your avatar?
Man, that's gonna be a boring answer. My VTuber is a 20 buck VTuber. Boo.pm is like a Japanese website where you can buy things, and I bought my live 2D model from there because I liked it. That's the story of my VTuber model. And the reason I decided to go for VTubing in general, I just woke up one day and I was like, let's try a VTuber model for fun. I went on boot.pm, downloaded the free one, set it up, and then I used it for like, I don't know, a year almost. Then after that, I upgraded to the guy, and now I've been running the guy for a year or two, I think. I almost feel bad calling myself a VTuber sometimes. People are really into VTubing. It's not at all like that, right? It's like their OC and they are having a debut, right? With like their model, and it's all like a super big deal. I'm really not like that. Something that's nice with the VTubing model though is that I don't need to look pretty. I can play well on my shirt. That's kind of nice.
With Eureka Orthos fully conquered and the next deep dungeon at best a full expansion away, tell me what's next for your streams. Do you have any upcoming challenges planned?
So I actually have plans, but they're not really content related. So my plan for Twitch is to get my partner. For my YouTube, I've been putting a lot of work on my YouTube. I mean, it feels kind of bad to say. I've been putting more work in my YouTube than my Twitch. So I hired my friend to like help me do the thumbnails and all that. And I've been putting a lot of work into the thumbnails. I've been trying to make shorts, YouTube shorts as well. I've been trying to put out more like videos are not just VODs. When I started uploading on my YouTube seriously was to have one player of every job for every deep dungeon. My idea is that if someone goes on YouTube and they're like, okay, I want to clear Dancer in Evan High, then they would type, Dancer Evan High clear. And then they would always have a video available, at least one, at least mine. Because when I was trying to get my Omnis, I did not have that luxury. There's a lot of jobs, especially when I was doing like the stuff like Black Mage and POTD, where there was just no like resource. Like it was just good luck, you're going in blind. So like after I went through that myself, then I made it my goal to actually have each job recorded, at least on the higher floors. I beat that goal. So now I've got every job up there, which is really good. VODs are also interesting. I love it when someone comes to my stream from my YouTube. Reminds me of all these VOD channels. I guess I'm kind of a VOD channel at this point too, but like, like the people like ZFG and Pengar and like people that just upload all their Twitch streams on YouTube. But then me, I don't really watch Twitch ever. Even though I'm a streamer, I don't really watch Twitch much. It's interesting that you consume all their content on YouTube, but then they're really a Twitch streamer.
I'm the same way. I definitely watch more YouTube than Twitch. And when I started first creating content, I started on Twitch. And then as I got into YouTube, I definitely liked doing the YouTube way more.
I realized that as I was talking with other Final Fantasy XIV content creators, people, they don't care about their VODs as much as me. I think I'm the weird one out there. Me, if I stream and the VOD is like unwatchable after for whatever reason, I kind of feel I wasted my time because for me, like the main drive is putting my VOD on my YouTube after. Honestly, that's what motivates me to stream sometimes. Yeah, it's fun to hang out on the stream. And yeah, it's fun to hang out with the community, but it's that moment where I put the VOD on YouTube after that really, I don't know, I really like that because then I'm going to prepare the thumbnail. thumbnail, the description, the timestamps, all that. It's kind of like I immortalize the VOD after. Top priority for my streams is making sure my VOD is going to be good to watch after. So I even have the chat of my Twitch on my OBS overlay, which means that people are watching on YouTube after, they can see the chat, right? Because I'm talking with the chat during my streams. Because I remember when I was watching Angelus, like way back for my clears, I do remember that was annoying as a YouTube watcher. The streamer interacts with the chat, but you don't see the chat on the VOD. I always found that annoying. So I put the chat on my OBS to make sure that it's on my YouTube.
Speaking of YouTube, your most popular video of all time is a 22-second clip from League of Legends. As a non-League player, explain to me what's going on in this clip and why it resonated so much with the community.
Oh man, I think that's the clip called Blood Money, huh? So the reason this clip really popped off is because it was posted on Reddit. Man, I was 20 back then. I was like a kid. How do I explain it for like people that don't really know what's going on? So like this is a team game where you're playing as a team against another team and you're going for objectives and all that. So as you can see in that clip, I'm just kind of moving around with my friend, right? He's called High Dream. So me and High Dream are on the same team and we're just kind of walking around. We're going to the top lane. As you can see on the minimap, there's a lot of dots, the purple dots. It's because if we go kill the purple dots, we'll get a lot of money, but the money isn't shared. It's only one of us that's trying to get the money. So we're kind of racing there against each other. Both of us want the money and both of us are greedy. What my friend does there is we're going to walk past a bus. And what he does is he attacks the bus, but then he walks away. So the bus kills me. So this way I don't get the loot. I don't get the gold.
So the video is you getting screwed over by your teammate.
Exactly. The reason this was kind of a popular clip is because this was in a tournament.
So this is when you're supposed to be competing as a team and he's like, nah, I want that money.
Yeah, but that's because it was a team that we were destroying. So, we were kind of messing around.
Yeah,
but like, that's what I meant when I said I wasn't mature enough back then for, tournaments and stuff like that. It's because we were doing things like that.
You guys just memeing in live competitions. I love it. A lot of times I feel like elements of the Final Fantasy XIV community are super focused on weird drama and toxicity or spreading obviously fake positivity, that it's easy to lose sight of the good that does exist. To counter this, I like to get guests to say something genuinely positive about a couple different people, including themselves. Starting off, name a Final Fantasy XIV player who you admire or who drives you to be a better player yourself.
I gotta give it to Alicia Nicole, man. Even though I've never really taught her that much, I mean, just a few replies on Twitter and on streams. It was nice to have a competition for the Omni Warfare because I was a little scared when I went for it that no one would actually go for it as hard as I would. It was nice to see someone that was super competitive and someone that was actually willing to go to crazy length like me. She definitely drive me to be a better player.
Aside from Alethea, who are some other deep dungeon experts that I can link below for people to follow?
I mean, there's so many, man. Look, there's, of course, Angelus Demonus, which is like the grandfather of Deep Dungeon. There's Meiji, which is like the grandmother of Deep Dungeon. There's Aurora Moon, which is like a crazy healer guy. There's like Omni Ross that went for his Omni. There's Sig90, which made actually probably the guy that I recommend the most for PUTD on YouTube. In fact, I can actually shout out a specific Twitch team called Final Fantasy XIV Solo, which Angelus created. We are 16 members. So Ben Rice, Eric, Lochen, Matt, Omni Ross, Aurora, Sig9, Ellie the Lemon, Bowie, Meiji, Sadie, me, Angelus, Sheila, Seven Witch Party, and Delicious Dairyman. All very good Deep Dungeon creators. I'd recommend you follow any of them. I would definitely check out all the people in that team.
And then who's someone outside of Final Fantasy, either on Twitch, YouTube, a band, an artist, or anyone who you're really into right now and who deserves a shout out?
Kind of a weird shout out, but I've been very obsessed with a game called Barony lately. It's like an old school roguelite, but in 3D. It's kind of a modern take on the old roguelite formula. And the reason I'm shouting this game out specifically is because it's one of the few games where they have a Discord server for their game. Their game has been out for a really long time, and yet they're still super active in the Discord. Like, I'll post a bug report in their Discord, and like they'll fix it the next patch. Like, it's crazy that after 8 years, they're still supporting like that much, and they're releasing great updates. And I'm a big enjoyer of indie games. So whenever I see an indie developer that's actually super close with the community through Discord, it's always really nice. So I guess I'm going to give them the shout out.
That's awesome. And then solo runs or not, accomplishing something like you did takes a lot of support. Tell me someone either in real life, from the community, or even a pet who always has your back.
You remember the guy I said I hired to help me do my YouTube stuff?
Yeah.
He's called Crow Mudjuk. Crow has been helping me out with the YouTube stuff. I've been paying him, I pay peanuts, but I like to pretend it's a real salary. That's been great. That's helped me a lot during the World First race too, because I was actually doing all my thumbnails. The fact that he could help me do the thumbnails during the World First run, considering that I beat Alicia by 2 hours 30 minutes, probably means that I would have not gotten the World First if I was actually doing my thumbnails, because I was uploading my videos the day after I would do them, because of course the first 2 weeks people were trying to clear, so I wanted to get my VODs out as quickly as I can. He's also a moderator on my stream. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm also gonna shout out my other friend Oyun, and he's actually the guy that drew my emotes for my Twitch and Discord. His emotes are so popular on my stream, specifically the one called Stare. This emote, man, is the most popular emote by far on my stream. It always makes me laugh. I recently created a Discord server because I have a form for like feedback about my stream. One of the questions was, do you want a Discord for my community? Out of the 30 so people that answered, like 5 of them said yes, only to use that emote. So now we have a Discord server. Some people only use it for the emote. That's great. So yeah, gonna shout out my 2 friends, Crow and Oyun.
Finally, with everything you've accomplished, what are you most proud of?
I'm glad that even though I was kind of a late bloomer that arrived in Shadowbringer for the Deep Dungeon, I was actually able to prove my worth in EO by being the World First Omni, starting at the same level as everyone else, not having like 3 years of knowledge I could watch and read guides. It was nice to kind of be validated that I was in fact able to compete with all the people that were like there since the beginning. That definitely felt like my big accomplishment. In fact, I would probably say this felt like my biggest gaming accomplishment in my life. I still feel like this achievement specifically is the one I'm the most proud of out of everything I've done.
For the record, I ended up getting the EO clear on my second attempt, but for me, this interview podcast is without question what I'm most proud of, and I want to thank you so much for coming on today to talk. I can't do this show without other people to interview, and I'm so incredibly grateful for every person who agrees to come hang out and talk about the game. I certainly talk a lot, but the final word is yours. Tell everyone where they can find you and any parting thoughts.
You can find me on Twitter under the name I'm currently on the podcast, so Finh Bezahl on Twitter, Finh Bezahl on Twitch, Finh Bezahl on YouTube as well. I'm definitely the most active on these 3 platforms. You can also follow my Discord server, which I'm in for my community, which you're gonna find in this description of that video. There's also the Angelus Discord, which even though it's a streamer Discord, it's really the solo Deep Dungeon community Discord, so you can definitely hang out there. It's gonna be in the description as well. And my parting words is, don't let others' opinions of EO affect your own opinion of EO. Don't listen to veterans like me. We make it sound like there's a lot of problems with EO. We're a very like small minority of people, and like even though our opinion is nice to hear, it's definitely not representative of the majority of people. So I would take our opinion with a grain of salt. I would just try the content for yourself, see if you like it. If you like EO, that's great. Then you can maybe try MLI and POTD as well. See if you like them. Maybe you don't like them because you don't like getting one shot by crits. That's fine, perfectly fine. Then EO's there for you. That's perfectly fine as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming.
No problem. It was nice. Thank you very much.